They called it science. The FDA called it dangerous. The billionaires did it anyway. In 2023, Brian Johnson, a tech entrepreneur worth hundreds of millions of dollars, sat in a medical clinic in California and watched his teenage son's blood plasma drip into his own veins. He filmed it. He posted it. He called it research. His son gave a liter of plasma. His father gave a liter back to his own aging father. 3 generations of the Johnson family, connected by tubes, in the name of longevity. The internet didn't know whether to be fascinated or horrified. Both responses were correct. Hashtag the 160-year-old experiment that started it all. The story of young blood and aging does not begin in Silicon Valley. It begins in 1864 in a Paris laboratory, where a French physiologist named Paul Bert performed an experiment so disturbing it would not be repeated for nearly a century. He surgically stitched 2 rats together, one old, one young, so their circulatory systems merged into one. They shared blood, shared organs, shared whatever passed between them through the living connection. The old rat got younger, not dramatically, not magically, but measurably. Its tissues showed signs of regeneration. Its organs responded to signals they had stopped responding to. The biological clock appeared to have, in some small way, reversed. Then the young rat deteriorated. The young rats, notably, did worse, a finding the longevity community prefers not to emphasize. Bert published his findings and moved on. The scientific community filed the results under interesting but impractical, and largely forgot about them for 50 years. The billionaires, when they eventually discovered this literature, focused on what happened to the old rat. They did not linger on what happened to the young one. Hashtag the 2005 paper that changed everything. In 2005, a team of researchers at Stanford University published a paper in Nature that reignited the entire field. They used the same technique, parabiosis, from the Greek for living beside, to join old and young mice at the circulatory system. What they found matched what Paul Bert had seen in 1864, but now with molecular precision. The young blood activated stem cell signaling pathways in the old mice that had been dormant for years. Muscle cells regenerated. Liver tissue repaired itself. The old mice moved differently. They healed faster. Their cells behaved younger. The paper circulated rapidly beyond the scientific community. Within months it reached the corridors of Silicon Valley, where a generation of tech billionaires who had conquered markets, disrupted industries, and accumulated more wealth than most countries were now confronting the one problem they could not engineer around. They were getting old, and they were not going to accept that quietly. Hashtag the man who decided death was a problem to be solved. Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and one of the earliest investors in Facebook, has been unusually candid about his priorities. "I'm against death," he said at a longevity conference. Not in the poetic sense. In the literal engineering sense, Thiel candidly admitted that aging is a problem technology can solve, and that there's also a lot of money to be made from solving it. He reportedly directed his attention toward Ambrosia, a startup founded by a Stanford-trained physician named Jesse Carmozin, which offered a simple proposition: pay $8,000 and receive a transfusion of plasma from donors under 25. The company called it a study. They monitored blood biomarkers. They told clients the results look promising. Healthy participants aged 35 and older received transfusions of blood plasma from donors under 25, and researchers monitored their blood over the next 2 years for molecular indicators of health and aging. The waiting list grew. Clients flew in from across the country. Some were in their 80s. Some were hedge fund managers in their 40s who had simply decided they would not age. Then the FDA arrived. Hashtag the warning that Silicon Valley ignored. In February 2019, the Food and Drug Administration issued a statement so direct it was almost unprecedented in its bluntness. There is no proven clinical benefit of infusion of plasma from young donors to cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent these conditions, and there are risks associated with the use of any plasma product. Ambrosia shut down within days. The founder was unreachable. The clients, who had paid thousands of dollars and received transfusions of strangers' blood, received no follow-up. The risks the FDA referenced were not trivial. Plasma transfusions carry the possibility of transfusion reactions, infections, immune complications, and a condition called TROLI, transfusion-related acute lung injury, which can be fatal. In medical settings, these risks are managed with rigorous matching, screening, and monitoring. In a longevity startup operating on the margins of regulation, the monitoring was self-reported biomarkers, but the warning did not stop the experiments. It redirected them. The billionaires simply moved their operations to places with fewer questions. Hashtag what the science actually found. Here is where the story becomes genuinely complicated, because the underlying science is not nothing. It is just not what the clinics were selling. Stanford neuroscientist Tony Weiss-Corey, who co-founded Elkhest, described young blood as nature's cocktail, almost like a polypharmacy in the blood. Blood is full of proteins, enzymes, growth factors, and signaling molecules that genuinely change with age. Research from UC Berkeley showed that specific proteins in young blood, GDF11, TIMP2, and others, can activate regenerative processes in old tissue. The science is real. The proteins are real. The regeneration in mice is real, but there are two problems that the clinics and the billionaires glossed over. Problem 1 Most of the evidence comes from mice, not humans. When researchers tried to replicate the parabiosis effects in human clinical trials, the results were significantly weaker, shorter-lived, and inconsistent. Problem 2, and this is the one that changes the ethical calculus entirely. A study conducted at UC Berkeley found that when delivered alone, blood from older mice was more inhibitory to the regenerative capacities of younger mice than blood from younger mice was beneficial to older ones. The old blood damages the young every time a wealthy 60-year-old receives a transfusion of a 20-year-old's plasma, something flows in the other direction too. The young donor system receives signals, diluted, perhaps, but present, from an aging body that has accumulated decades of inflammatory proteins, damaged cellular debris, and biological signals of senescence. The young rat got worse. The scientists noted it. The billionaires moved on. Brian Johnson's confession in 2023. Brian Johnson, who had spent $2 million per year on his anti-aging protocol and made his son's blood transfusion the centerpiece of a Netflix documentary, quietly admitted something. Brian Johnson said that he stopped receiving plasma transfusions from younger people, including his son, after examinations found no benefits. He had filmed the procedure. He had posted it online. He had implied that the science supported it. He had built a media narrative around the experiment, then he stopped. Because it didn't work, the Netflix documentary did not feature this conclusion prominently. The real science being done in the shadows while the headline-grabbing transfusions were failing. Quieter and more rigorous research was producing something more interesting. UC Berkeley's Irina Conboy, one of the original 2005 parabiosis researchers, had a different theory from the start. The benefit of young blood is not that it adds something positive. It is that it dilutes something negative. Old blood accumulates a protein called TGF-beta, which actively suppresses stem cell function and promotes tissue aging. Young blood doesn't supercharge the old body. It simply has less of the bad signal. Conboy developed her own plasma replacement formula, patented by UC Berkeley, claiming it provides the anti-aging benefits with just 2 infusions per year without requiring young plasma donors, using only saline and albumin. We need to get rid of bloodletting, she said. Her real goal is to develop molecules that could deliver the same benefits without any transfusion. This is where the science is now heading. Not young blood. Not harvesting donors. A targeted pharmaceutical approach to removing the aging signals that accumulate in blood over decades. The billionaires' willingness to experiment on themselves, recklessly, expensively, publicly, did something unintentional. It accelerated the research field. Their money-funded laboratories. Their self-experimentation generated data, however messily. And their public failures forced the scientific community to articulate, with increasing precision, why the simple story of young blood equals youth was always wrong. The question nobody is asking: there is a conversation happening around all of this that almost nobody in the mainstream longevity community wants to have directly. If you are a young person, 19, 22, 25, who sells your plasma to a startup that infuses it into a 60-year-old billionaire for $8,000, what do you receive in return? A few $100.